As Donald Trump embarks on his second term in the White House, China is set to play a key role in shaping his administration's defense and foreign policy. From Beijing to Tokyo, Brussels, Moscow, and beyond, officials are closely observing how he approaches security relations with China. The United States and China remain deadlocked on arms control. According to the Pentagon, China's nuclear arsenal has expanded considerably in recent years, leading to calls for an American buildup in response. While the United States still possesses a significantly larger stockpile, Washington is increasingly worried that China's growth signals a shift in its nuclear strategy. A particularly alarming development is Trump's reported consideration of resuming explosive nuclear testing, which could prompt China and Russia to follow suit. China's secrecy surrounding its nuclear capabilities and strategic intentions fuels uncertainty among United States policymakers and leaves room for speculation. The Pentagon is a primary source of information on China's arsenal, but its annual military power reports often hedge statements with terms like probably. Given this uncertainty, Chinese experts can provide additional insights to help assess widely accepted claims and assumptions about China's nuclear landscape. The experts have expressed deep concern about the overall deterioration of United States-China relations, emphasizing that communication and mutual understanding have reached a historic low. Regarding nuclear policy, many believe that U.S. intelligence assessments of China's nuclear intentions are often flawed, as past predictions have frequently been inaccurate. Although no single source can definitively interpret Beijing's nuclear strategy, Chinese experts generally see no fundamental shift in policy. Despite a joint statement by Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping affirming human oversight in AI-driven nuclear decision-making, the likelihood of progress in arms control under Trump remains slim. However, Trump has once again raised the prospect of trilateral arms control negotiations, vowing at the World Economic Forum to bring Russia and China to the table. A similar initiative in his first term was rejected by Beijing. China has long argued that its comparatively smaller nuclear stockpile justifies limited transparency. While Beijing has not officially addressed reports of its expanding arsenal, government representatives continue to assert that China's nuclear forces are defensive. They insist that the U.S. should take the lead in reducing both its arsenal size and the role of nuclear weapons in its defense strategy, including adopting a no-first-use policy. Chinese experts echoed these sentiments, acknowledging that while China is open to dialogue, it is unlikely to engage on U.S. terms. Several experts emphasized the extreme risks of miscalculation and misunderstanding in nuclear relations. With one warning, this is the one area where misunderstandings cannot be afforded. The prevailing view among Chinese experts is that the U.S. and Russia must take the first steps toward arms reduction. One expert noted that China is not in a position to engage in a trilateral agreement due to the vast discrepancy in nuclear stockpiles. China is estimated to have around 600 warheads, compared to 5,225 in the U.S. and 5,580 in Russia. Many experts are keen to see how Trump's second term will affect U.S.-China nuclear relations and global nuclear stability. While his first presidency saw the U.S. withdrawing from international treaties and agreements, a trend expected to continue, one expert suggested that Trump had a genuine interest in arms control, though progress was hindered by the pandemic. However, concerns persist that the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT, could be in jeopardy, particularly if Trump follows through on the idea of resuming nuclear testing. Some also fear his administration might weaken the global non-proliferation regime, especially regarding the Korean Peninsula. Another expert highlighted that Elbridge Colby, recently appointed as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, has previously supported South Korea developing nuclear weapons. They also noted that during Trump's first term, U.S. negotiators offended their Chinese counterparts in meetings when China was genuinely open to arms control discussions. On a more hopeful note, one expert cited a successful 2017 U.S.-China collaboration to retrieve highly enriched uranium from a Ghanaian research reactor as a model for building trust. They hoped similar cooperative efforts could lay the groundwork for future bilateral engagement on nuclear issues. Trust building will be critical for any progress in arms control or conflict prevention. Many experts express concern that as relations worsen, the United States increasingly views military deterrence as the primary means of engagement with China, sidelining diplomacy and reassurance as tools for stability. One expert pointed out that this fits a broader pattern of nuclear-armed states behaving irrationally. For instance, despite a 2022 statement by the 5 recognized nuclear powers renouncing nuclear war and threats, Russia soon issued nuclear threats against Ukraine, and the United States later deployed nuclear-capable medium-range missiles in the Philippines, both actions deeply troubling to China. A key question among United States officials and analysts is whether China's nuclear expansion signals a shift in strategy. Many believe something must have changed to trigger this growth, leading to a debate among scholars and analysts. Some theories suggest that China seeks greater leverage over the United States in non-nuclear matters, a boost in international status, or a shift toward a more aggressive nuclear posture. Others argue that the buildup is simply aimed at strengthening China's second strike capability. Chinese experts overwhelmingly reject the idea that Beijing has altered its nuclear strategy or lowered the threshold for nuclear use. They maintain that the reported arsenal expansion does not conflict with China's long-standing no-first-use policy. Among the various theories proposed, the most plausible explanation, according to Chinese experts, is that China is responding to U.S. advancements in missile defense and other technologies that could threaten its second strike capability. Ensuring the survivability of this second strike capability remains the cornerstone of China's nuclear strategy, one expert emphasized. If China is increasing its warhead numbers, it is not to change its overall strategy, but to maintain its ability to respond to a nuclear attack. The expert suggested that U.S. policymakers should recognize China's concerns over the vulnerability of its retaliatory capabilities and factor that into their strategic calculations. While some U.S. media reports speculate that China has been shifting toward a more aggressive nuclear doctrine since 2012, further scrutiny has shown that these claims were based on misinterpretations of official Chinese sources and unreliable secondary information. One expert noted that no prominent Chinese scholars or analysts advocate for a more aggressive nuclear posture. However, another expert raised an alternative theory regarding China's buildup. Rather than incrementally increasing warheads, which could be offset by U.S. missile defenses, China may be opting for a large-scale expansion all at once to ensure its second strike capability remains viable for the long term. The actual number of warheads China possesses and its future plans remain uncertain. The Pentagon estimates China currently has around 600 warheads and will exceed 1,000 by 2030. However, given previous assessments of China's plutonium stockpiles, these numbers could be difficult to achieve. The Pentagon suggests China may obtain additional plutonium from its fast breeder reactors, one of which became operational in 2024. Although fast breeder reactors pose proliferation risks, some experts question whether China would rely on this method for weapons-grade plutonium, considering the technology's inefficiencies. Since China, as a recognized nuclear power, has the right to resume direct production of weapons-grade plutonium, it may prefer a more straightforward approach. One U.S. expert also noted that using plutonium from fast breeder reactors in warheads would require design modifications. Chinese experts, meanwhile, are skeptical of the Pentagon's high estimates of China's warhead count. While not privy to exact figures, one expert argued that the U.S. should recognize that China doesn't have enough fissile material to meet these projections. The idea that China would rely on fast breeder reactors for this purpose also seemed unlikely to them, as it would introduce unnecessary complexity into nuclear decision-making. While Trump's second-term policies remain uncertain, Any engagement with China on nuclear risk reduction or arms control should be based on the understanding that Beijing's fundamental priorities have not changed. Despite Trump's resistance to international treaties, meaningful progress in arms control will require a commitment to agreements like the CTBT and the Fissile Materials Cutoff Treaty. Furthermore, the U.S. must acknowledge its role in prompting China's nuclear expansion. Many policymakers and analysts prefer to believe that China is adopting a more aggressive stance. However, the more plausible explanation is that China is reacting to advancements in U.S. missile defense and other damage limitation measures, an acknowledgement that remains difficult for Washington to accept.